Uh, Baruch Hashem is 4:20. Had some technical problems yesterday. I don't know. But today is today. So let's get high. All right. So, all right. And the Zohar is very funny because it's kind of written all over the place. And you can find in the middle of it suddenly the answer to the question that you have. And one of the questions I've always had, I'd understood it, was in the Haggadah, the Haggadah that we say during the Passover Seder, that one of the things that we mentioned, that when the Jewish people came out of Egypt, Mitzrayim, that we were like a young girl who hadn't yet developed breasts. So I always wondered, what's with the hadn't developed breasts? I mean, we could just say, the Jewish people were like a young child. And that's why, as soon as we went out, almost the first thing that happened to us was that Amalek, the nation of Amalek, attacked us. And God said, I won't be, my name will not be full in the world until the nation of Amalek is destroyed. And God said, and I, God, will destroy them. And, of course, time is running out. Only have a couple of 100 years left. And it's not foreseeable that anything in the world is going to move very much. So we should be able to see who Amalek is. And one of the things about Amalek, and now we see it's not just that the Jewish people were like a child, but rather that the Jewish people were like a young girl. And Amalek came and pedophiled, I don't know if you can use that as a verb, this young child. And that's what really pissed God off, to say, these people can never repent. I have to destroy them. Nonetheless, what's the deal with a young girl who had not yet developed breasts? So this is what I found in the Zohar today. And one of the things that it says is that, and it is mentioned a few times in the Zohar, and I would say numerous times in the Zohar, when talking about women, to mention that women's beauty is found in her breasts. And because the breasts are very unique to woman. And the question really is not why women have breasts, because they need to suckle children. Truth is, a woman doesn't need breasts to suckle children. She only needs the nipple, and men also have the mammary gland and actually could nurse a child. There's such a story in the Gemara, in the Talmud, that there was a man who lost his wife and she just gave birth to a new baby, and he prayed to God for a way to sustain his child. So God did a miracle and made the man able to nurse the child, which the rabbis deduce from this that it's easier for a man to grow breasts than a woman than to get a job, at least for this guy. but but nonetheless, so the breasts have more of a meaning than just attached to the gland, and we see that in that men have nipples. I mean, men have really no need for nipples. And if God's going to do a miracle, God could, make the nipple also, I guess. But, but men have nipples. All men have nipples. You don't have nipples, it's like something's wrong with you. And so we see with women that women, have have the breasts that end in the nipple. And here's the thing, see, the nipple is a sign of compassion. There's many stories about the native people on this land when the white men came and the women would ask for mercy. They would reveal their breasts. Of course, they didn't know these white men were Puritans and thought that this was like an evil act. And killed even more. But what it shows, see, because both men and women have compassion, that is shown in the sign of the nipple. But woman has greater compassion. So through this, we can understand what it says in the Haggadah, that the Jewish people went out like a young girl who hadn't yet developed breasts, because the breast is the beauty of the woman. I mean, her whole body is beautiful, and her face is beautiful, and her hair is beautiful. So many beautiful aspects of woman. But the Zohar says that this is the what really shines for woman more than anything else. And so how is this connected to the Jewish people? And this is the brilliance of the Zohar, to be able to answer things in a very short way, just give you a little bit of information, like that little piece of the puzzle you're missing, and when you put it together, the whole thing makes sense. And what the Zohar offers to this question is that the breasts, the beauty of the breasts, are equivalent to the beauty of the human being. And what's the beauty of the human being? The beauty of the human being is in doing compassion. So it means that we went out of Egypt and we hadn't yet developed our capacity for compassion. We've been slaves. It's hard to have compassion when you're a slave. Someone rules over you and you're not allowed to have compassion. You do what the slave master tells you to do. And suddenly they're free, and because they haven't experienced compassion, they didn't have any good deeds. So that's like a young girl who hasn't yet developed breasts, hasn't yet developed good deeds. And this answers the question my friend Karolika asked, that how can we connect, sort of with our essence? Well, I mean, and there is a division between the person and the essence. There's not supposed to be, but there is a division. And that division is very clear. That division is made through a veneer of lies that have just covered the world. So it seems anywhere you go to sort of connect with your essence, all you see mirroring back to you is the servitude that we all live in. None of us are free, because the truth is we live under the rule of Rome. And if anyone wants to contest that, they can just look at the names of the planets, the names of the months, the calculations of our years, and our legal system, I can't think of the word of it, where we fight with one another to see who, what is just, every wins is just, battle through justice through battle or some bullshit, and Rome is just everywhere. The coin of Rome, the religion of Rome, everywhere. And what Rome has learned, and we see practiced in our time, is don't worry about the truth, just lie. And if you lie enough, and you lie to enough people, often enough, the lie will become the truth, or at the least, you'll destroy truth. So maybe people won't believe your lie, but they won't know what's true. And we see that in science, where, scientific speak for I don't know is the Big Bang Theory. No one has any idea what could have produced this universe. And instead of saying I don't know, they make a theory out of I don't know called the Big Bang, which is what was a joke originally that someone said, you mean the whole, one of the physicists said, you mean the whole thing just started from a Big Bang? And everyone, yeah, which just means we don't know what happened. And this lie has been perpetuated throughout the world until it's considered to be truth. And the same with their religion, that the story of Jesus never happened. There is not one bit of historical evidence, even though it wasn't that long ago, and there were many noted historians like Josephus, who lived only a few, was born only a few decades after Jesus lived, and Pliny and Philo, and there were all these dudes, man, that they were all writing the history of the Middle East, and not one person writes anything about Jesus. There is one copy of Josephus where someone obviously snuck in a paragraph, but there, there's nothing. Why was there nothing? Because the story never happened. Generally, it's all right to have a story that never happened. You can believe what you want to believe, but not when it, when it's libel, slander against the Jewish people, accusing us of doing deicide when not even the whole thing didn't even never happen. It would have been historical evidence. It just never happened. And how do you prove it never happened? There is no evidence. But they say the lie enough, and they didn't just say the lie. They would go out conquering the world to spread their lie, or spreading their lie to conquer the world. And, they would go into a place and they would tell them what everyone had to believe. And the people who said no, they killed. And the people who said yes, they kept alive. And in that way, they started, like sort of gene selection of the weak, of people they could control. And those are the ones they, put into different places. And the same when, the same Roman Empire, that started World War I so they could take the Middle East, then did the same thing there. And they split up the Middle East into fiefdoms that they different, like France and England, they split them up in who would do what and how they could make war there forever by just, try to partition the Palestinians from the Israelis. And we see how well that worked for them. It just worked great. They've made so much money having war after fucking war. And because that's what America is based on, that's what Rome is based on. And because we live in this veneer of bullshit everywhere that we look, so we feel, and we are in fact detached from our essence. And so the question is, how do we then reattach to our essence? Where is our essence? Essence is everywhere, and we can reattach in any way. Like any way where there is essence, you get to one part of the essence, you got the whole essence. How do you get to the essence? So this is the teaching of the breast. See, that's what's beautiful to the woman. And to God, all of creation is woman. Because God wants to be able to experience sexuality, so all creation is woman, and God's the man. Makes sense. And what does it mean? The breasts of creation. So the breasts of creation are compassion. And that's what God finds beautiful. And so the question is, like, what is compassion? There's kindness, there's compassion. What's the difference? So kindness, like, is something you do with a child. Why? Because the child doesn't need to deserve it. The child deserves it by the fact the child's a child. And everyone knows that children are like blind to many things, and we have to protect them, whether it's your child or somebody else's child. You see a child in trouble, and we want to protect that child. I mean, it's a very normal human emotion that, thank God, has not been, taken from us. That we all have that when it comes down to it. I mean, except for these people who hurt children, which are just the lowest of the low, and which God will not be satisfied until these people are wiped out of the world. I mean, it's just a horrible thing to do. I mean, sometimes you can understand a man who abuses another adult, man or woman, because we're all very complex, went through a lot of things, and we're left with this kind of residue, and it works itself out, and we're all part of the problem, we're all part of the solution. But a child, it is separate. We're supposed to all protect the child, let them grow up, and then they can, that's what they inherit. Is what the rest of us did not fix, they inherit. And so that's kindness. And kindness you do because it's just a human thing. The milk of human kindness. Like, this is a woman who, like, it's interesting, the breasts in, we're talking about breasts, that the breasts in Hebrew are called shaddayim, comes the word shaddai, which means enough, because God, when creation was spreading out, God said, die enough. And therefore it's called Shaddai, which interesting because Shaddai is the gematria of 314, with the first three numbers of pi, because that's sort of what encircled the line and made creation to be finite. Otherwise, it would still be going. And yeah. Yes, and so the breasts are called shaddayim because there's always enough. Guys are like enough to the other, but there's always enough in the breast, because it's not like the breast. It's not like the breast is full of milk. It's not like a cow, an udder, an udder, but rather that the mammary gland is activated by the sucking of the child. So the child's never going to find the breast to be empty. There's always going to be enough. And that should be true with the human being also. That to do kindness, there should always be enough. Someone needs kindness, someone puts out their hand. We shouldn't walk by without putting something in their hand. I mean, we don't have to worry they're going to get rich. I mean, if someone has to humble themselves so much to put their hand out in the street like a beggar, I mean, that's enough. We should just give them to them and shut up. There's a law in the Torah that like, if you steal a cow, they fine you like 4 times. I don't remember exactly, but if you steal a lamb, they fine you 3 times, because part of the punishment is you had to put it on your shoulders and run away with it. And embarrassment is, a lot of times we do kindness to people, they shouldn't be embarrassed. All these things is what develops the breast, is the doing of kindness. And that's what's beautiful to the human being. But what is then compassion? So compassion is when the person doesn't deserve it. And a person can say, they walk out in the street, they see people on the street, and you want to say, go get a job. People don't say that anymore because there aren't any jobs. So now there are jobs, but, no one wants to work for these people. No one wants to be a slave to these people. God threw COVID into the mix just in time to keep the world from spinning out of control, and they will never reconstruct it because it was like this fine, delicate, perfectly, mechanized situation, and there are so many pieces to it that cannot be reconstructed. And this gives us human beings throughout the world 220 years before the end of the 6,000-year calendar, before entering into the 1,000 years of woman and the 1,000 years of peace, that that we can make the world good, turn it around, make it good, take all the things in the world that are really good for the human being and really discourage the things that are bad for the human being. And to make our world one cohesive world, like one body that operates together instead of this stupid foreign policy about we have to compete with China. Nothing could be dumber. How can a people, a lazy fat people like Americans, we're only 300 million, compete with 1.5 billion Chinese who have thousands of years knowing how to work together? And who are we to make ourselves the paradigm of the world when we're such a terrible racist country, when we're supposed to be an immigrant country, and that this is the paradigm of freedom and democracy. This is the paradigm of this is the epitome of bullshit and lies. And maybe we should be looking to China to help China, because maybe that would be a way to reducing greenhouse gases if everything was produced in the East, where you have the majority of human beings. I mean, together with India, they got like 3 billion human beings, and then yeah. Means that the other 5 are in all the rest of the world. I mean, it's really just stupid to try to want to compete with them. But a competition, that's what they do so people won't be kind. Because if we weren't all taught to compete, then we would all be kind. Because that's the human trait, is to be kind and not to worry about tomorrow or the next day. Because if we're kind to one another, if everyone's just kind, there's always going to be everyone, we should establish a minimum for everyone. That's what China has done. They don't have people out in the streets, with nothing to eat and living on the sidewalk, by the street. We should be ashamed of ourselves, man. I mean, this is and yet we want to put all our money into war and going up into outer space. This shit's got to stop. And one of the reasons is because we should recognize that one of the curses is written into the Torah, that in the future that the skies will rain lead, and that is what's happening because all the junk they put up there, which eventually finds its way drawn to the earth to burn up. It doesn't burn up. It particulates, gets into the clouds, gets mixed with the water, and it rains lead. I believe that ain't gonna be good for nobody. So this shit's got to stop. Anyways, my friend from Hawaii, she asked me a question about incest. Well, there's a whole part in Torah, in Akaber, Mos, one of the parshas in the Torah, where goes into a lot that people you should not have sex with, all the different relatives, not just relatives, but even someone I think who used to be the wife of your father. It's not your mother, but so it goes just beyond the genetics. And maybe that's a thing to understand, that this is something that's not, just good for the human being, not good for the human being to give birth to people from relatives, and not good for each of the human beings participating in it, it really affects the very soul of the human being. So, and it's just, I'm sorry for people who do this. I mean, it's just really, and it says that in the end, all the things that people did on purpose, that God will look at them and say, you really didn't know what you were doing. And we'll just make like you made a mistake. Because, people, you see what they're being taught. They're being taught not just by the church, but, the whole society takes on these things and takes on these stories. And it's decimated the Jewish people. This is just a true blood libel for 2,000 years, which is just decimated, chased us all over the world. Wasn't enough that Rome should throw us out into exile, but they chased us with this story until today. And the rabbis just refuse to tell the truth. They refuse to stand up to the church because they're in bed with the church, and the Jewish, the Jewish population in America is now split because a quarter of them are on the prick from Moco Loco. They're on his side. And they're on the conservative side, the evangelists, the guys are really carrying the flag of this bullshit and carrying it into Israel. And Israel is actually giving them land to go baptize people. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable, and it's not going to last. That this is what is known in the Zohar. The Zohar predicts in the end of days there will be what's called Milchomas Ruvain, the war of Ruvain, and Ruvain was the first son of Yaakov, the 12 sons, the 12 tribes, and he messed up his father's bed because he was angry at his father for moving in with Rachel's lover rather than his mother Leah, who was his wife. And the Zohar says that's the Milchomas Ruvain that will come back to the land at the end of days, will take the land, will terrorize the world, and will win. But they will not remain because they came for the wrong reason, and that is the Zionist state. And there will always, and in collusion with the rabbis who refuse to acknowledge the Quran as prophecy and Muhammad as a prophet, who would rather align themselves with the church who preaches that the Jews killed God. Go figure. So, and that has to obviously change. And the Palestinians should be given back their ancestral land, which is the Sinai, which has the most sunlight of anywhere on the earth, and which is a great asset and could be made just this beautiful city there and sell, light energy instead of oil. And there's no reason not to do that, because that land does not belong, historically does not belong to Egypt and does not belong to Israel. That is Palestine. The only reason that they want the land of Israel is because when Rome kicked the Jews out, they called the land Palestine, and that persisted until the Jews started coming back and was there. Well, this is Palestine. Well, there was never a Palestine, but there was a Palestinian people, not a political state, and they spread out from Gaza. And this is contiguous with Gaza is the Sinai. And it makes complete sense to do it, and it would stop with those two things, to give the Palestinians that land and to force the rabbis to admit that Muhammad is a prophet and the Quran is prophecy, and Sharia law is 1,000,000 times better than Roman law and closer to Jewish law. And that Jewish people can eat in the homes of Muslim people, and Muslim people can eat in the homes of Jewish people. And there's nothing contradictory in our books. And that's the truth of it, until the rabbis grow some balls that we're going to live in this, this violence, and they're to blame. The blood is on their hands, man. From the time of Muhammad, when they refused to acknowledge him then, until today. That's what I think. You can only say that getting high, man. I have to have something else to smoke. Anyways, thank you for listening, watching. Visit my site, dovidhouse.com. It's a publishing house to publish all my books. Buy a book, take a course. Check you out tomorrow.